Hello and welcome to This Woman's Work, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing women, the fantastic jobs they do and the paths that have led them to where they are today. I'm here today with Gemma. Hi Gemma.
Hello.
Could you tell the listener what it is you do for a living?
So I am a intellectual property lawyer. So I'm a chartered trademark attorney and I'm also a solicitor, but I've got to say I'm a non-practicing solicitor at the moment.
Okay.
But they're sort of like my two qualifications. And I own a company called the Little IP Company, which specialises in brand protection. So I help my clients with protecting their intellectual property all over the world, and in particular their trademarks, their copyright and their designs.
As always, we track back and we talk about little Gemma.
Yeah.
What were you like when you were younger? What were you into?
So little Gemma was, I would say, probably quite loud.
Ooh.
And sassy. My mum will tell you that little Gemma was like my youngest son, Thomas, because he's a bit of a pain.
Ah.
So I'm kind of like, she thinks that's really funny because he is, talking back and doing all the things apparently that I used to do.
So you were
when I was a
second
kid.
child as well?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I think that's quite interesting. But I look back at thinking back at, how I was when I was younger. I just remember just having so much fun all the time, being outside. So I grew up in Hampshire, in kind of like the middle of nowhere in a little village. And I have really fond memories of just being outside all the time. And mum sort of saying, yes. And mum saying, make sure you're home by dinner time. And you'd just go off with your mates. We're talking under 10.
Yeah.
And there was not a care in the world, and just go and have fun and
breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So school though, what were you? Were you good at school? Were you?
I wasn't. I actually really struggled at school. Oh. My older brother was a lot more. I would say more intelligent than me. He probably is. He was really academic, very, very good. He could read a book and know everything about it and pass all his exams and didn't really need to try. Whereas I really had to try. And at one point, I can't remember exactly how old I was, probably about 6 or 7. I was quite behind in my reading, especially, and my reading and writing skills. And I think I was something like 3 years behind where I should have been. My parents paid for me to have a private tutor, and within 6 months I caught up those 3 years. So I think, looking back, I was lazy.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to do it. I do think I'm slightly dyslexic.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
But I think that because I know that, I manage myself better, and I have to work a little bit harder than most people to remember things, or I've got ways of doing things now.
Yeah.
I definitely did struggle at school though.
Caught up then with your reading, and then was the rest of school pretty?
Yeah, I mean, then after I sort of caught up with that, and I had to continuously practice and try harder than everybody else, I would say. I was always in the top sets for things. There was in my secondary school there was 2 top sets and 2 lower sets, and I was in the lower of the top sets.
Yeah.
So I don't think school ever thought that I needed to be in the lower sets.
Yeah.
But I think academically in other subjects I've always been quite good. It's just the sort of the reading and the writing maybe is what pushed me back a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
But everything else I was quite all right at. Music in particular I loved. That was like my favourite. I used to do a lot of acting and singing and dancing. Quite creative in that sense. They were my favourite things.
There is. I've got to do some kind of, as more of this I'm doing, and the amount of entrepreneurial women that I'm chatting to that were quite thesp when they were younger.
Hugely. I used to do
and I think,
pantomimes.
what does that mean? I don't know what that correlation is though, but it's something about... Because equally they can then give... I'm jumping ahead. Like I'll ask questions later on about, like life advice and stuff, and they can often say things like, like worry less, I used to worry. So it's not like they were really necessarily hugely confident, but whether it's a bravery thing, it's just a bravery gene.
Maybe. I mean, in my work, because I do a lot of, I'm arguing all the time, it ain't like contentious stuff. I have to be very creative in my arguments. So there is a creativity there when you're a lawyer. And also as well, a lot of like barristers are very theatrical.
Oh, yeah.
So like there is kind of like this creative part of being a lawyer for sure. And I think that kind of helps me, you know, that I've got that kind of background.
Yeah, and you're comfortable doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so college, what A-levels did you do?
So when I went to, so what I did was sixth form. I went to a mixed sort of sixth form in Sleaford. So my parents, when I was in Hampshire, my parents got divorced when I was like 8. And my mum was a stay-at-home single mum. She couldn't afford to live in Hampshire. It was just too expensive.
Oh my gosh.
So she moved up to Lincolnshire, to Grantham, and bought a house there. She was able to buy a house outright in Grantham, so she didn't have to worry about anything.
And is that because there was family up here?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a support network.
I had my mum's side of the family lived in Lincolnshire, so she decided that was for her. So my dad stayed down in Guildford, he still lives there now, and then my mum moved up to Lincolnshire. So when I started secondary school, I went to secondary school in Grantham, and then after I finished my GCSEs, I then went to Sleaford to do the sixth form there.
Okay.
And I did, what did I do at my A-levels? I did a GNVQ actually. I did a GNVQ in IT and A-level in English, which is funny.
Wow.
And then I went to university in Leeds to do media management.
Well, I was going to say, how was this?
It's got nothing to do with law.
So your A-levels, you didn't necessarily pick them with a career in mind?
I didn't. And the reason for that is because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to work in media.
Yeah.
So I did IT because of
technical. Yeah.
Thought that would be a good idea. And also I was quite good at it.
Yeah.
So I did like the animation and stuff like that. Really enjoyed that part of the ITs, like part of the GMVQ that I did. I went to Leeds University and I did media and management degree.
Wow.
So I spent sort of 3 years doing the management side of stuff, but then also sort of doing radio stuff, TV stuff, learning about just generally how the media, how it works in the media and all of the background information that you need as well, which is great. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And when
Ergo slightly how you've ended up where you are now.
Well, actually, in my final year of uni, at the time when I started university, I wanted to work for a radio station. That's what I wanted to do, and I did.
As a DJ,
I didn't quite know exactly what I wanted to do. I'm more like the production side of it.
Yeah.
Then I went to work for a radio station. I used to work for Galaxy 105, which was part of Chrysalis then, but is now part of the Capital FM group now.
Yeah.
When I worked at Galaxy, I was there for like 3 or 4 years, I think. And then at that time, when I was kind of choosing what I wanted to do, and I was friends with all of the DJs, like they were sort of helping me find my way and what I really wanted to do.
So was this like an internship?
No, so I worked in the did the promotional side. I was like one of the Galaxy girls that drove around in the cars and went to all the promotions, and then...
And this was after uni?
During.
Oh, during, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, during uni.
Wow.
And then I did some voiceover work, and then when they would change over breakfast shows, when, you know, someone would go on holiday, there'd be a new show for a couple of weeks. I used to work on the show with one of the guys, and that was fun. And do
So how did you apply for that and get that then at uni?
So one of my friends it's all about who you know, isn't it?
Well,
one of my mates, she used to work at a radio station in Reading. She went up to, and I think they were owned by the same group. She went up to Leeds, was doing media. She got a job working at Galaxy. They were looking for other people, and they always took on uni students.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, it's just really
It's just
cheap.
one of those things. And it was so much fun. So much fun. We met so many amazing artists, and it was just a brilliant job. We didn't even care about how much I was being paid, to be quite honest with you. It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were there, it was at that point where, do you remember when Sarah Cox was on Radio 1 and she lost her job near enough overnight?
Yes.
At that point in my sort of radio career, I was really considering becoming a presenter. That's what I really thought I might like to do. And within the same week, my friend Safi, who was a presenter on a show, and Sarah Cox both lost their jobs. And I thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me.
This isn't a stable career.
No, I do want to have a family. I do want to have a stable career. Maybe I need to think about doing something else. At that time, I was in my final year of university and I was doing media law as an option.
Ooh.
And that was so interesting.
Yeah.
And I just thought like, maybe I should be a lawyer. Maybe I should look into this. And I remember saying to my nan, who will always tell you what she thinks, Nan, I'm thinking about being a solicitor. And she said to me, oh no, Gemmy, you can't do that. You're not intelligent enough to be a solicitor. So I just thought, I bloody am.
Yeah.
And I did.
Wow. So finished that degree and then went straight on into a top-up.
Yeah. So when I don't know if it's exactly the same now. I think it's similar though. So after I finished that degree, I then went to Leeds and Met University and I did a graduate diploma in law, which is essentially like a 3-year law degree in 1 year. It's mega intense.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I did that.
That's not for the faint-hearted.
No. And obviously got to pay for that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, then it was a lot cheaper. You know, when I went to university. I
can't even imagine how much that would cost now.
No. I mean, when I remember my first year's fees of being at Leeds University when I did my media degree, the first year fees were like 500 quid.
Oh no.
The second year were like 750 or 1,000. Like, it wasn't expensive.
No.
And that graduate diploma in law was, you know, it was thousands, but it wasn't what it would be now.
Oh God, no.
So that may stop people from taking that route. But I did the graduate diploma in law, and then you have to after that, to become a solicitor, you need to do a legal practice course after that. So then I went to Guildford.
Oh, okay.
To my dad's.
Yeah.
Lived with my dad and did, it's now called the Guildford College of Law. No, the Guildford Law University, I think, or University of Law, but it was the Guildford College of Law. Okay. And I went there and did my legal practice course, which is another year.
Right.
Full time.
Yeah.
Another year. And then you have to train for 2 years. Yeah. Before you can qualify.
Which is, that's kind of the same time period, really, as a pure law degree. It's about 7 years, isn't it?
Yeah, around about the same, I would say. So no, I think if you did it, you went straight into law. You probably, I think it's 3 years. Then you would do your legal practice course. So that'd be 4 years. Then you have 2 years training if you can get a training contract. They're like gold dust.
Oh gosh.
So when I tried to look for a training contract and I couldn't find one. I wasn't alone. Hardly anybody in my year got training contracts.
But yet you have to have one.
You have to qualify as a solicitor.
So you'd almost assume that practices would almost have to take them on.
They do, yeah, but they do. But there's just too many people wanting them.
Gosh, and do you think that's still the case?
Yes, it is, because I had this conversation with somebody recently. They can't find training contract, and the way you get in is you start working at a law firm as paralegal and hope that eventually becomes a training contract, which it did for me. So I went to a very small firm. Yeah. They'd never had a trainee solicitor before. I went in as a paralegal with the hope that would progress, and it did. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
And then as a result, because I worked for a really small firm, I did everything. Yeah. And I was really thrown in the deep end. Whereas if you go to bigger firms and you're a trainee, you're doing court bundles and you're doing, but like, it's not real lawyering, like I would say.
Oh no, they're treating you basically like an intern monkey, aren't they?
Yeah. And not all of them, but some of the bigger firms definitely. It wasn't like that for me because I was at a small firm. I had a caseload. I was a paralegal anyway before, so I had a caseload. It was just that now that work was actually going to go towards something. Yeah, yeah. So I was there for about a year before I started my training contract, and then I did 2 years. And then when I qualified as a solicitor, usually what happens is your salary normally about doubles. Yeah. And I remember going into a meeting with my boss and being like, right, let's talk about salary. Now I'm going to qualify. And they went, right, well, we're going to increase your salary by £800. And I was like, a month? And they were like, a year?
Oh, because of course they're just this tiny little law firm.
Well, no. I think they could have afforded to pay more.
Okay,
They
right.
just didn't want to because they
thought
weren't
they could
very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, see you later. So I obviously stayed there until I found something else. And then I moved and I went to a law firm in Leicester, bigger law firm in Leicester.
So by this point you were still in Guildford, were you?
No. I was back in Grantham at this time.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And then, so I was with my mum.
Yeah.
And then I went to Leicester, got a job at a law firm in Leicester who are fab, and still I love them because they refer work to me now and stuff. I've got lots of friends who work there who my friends are now partners. So
So they've really progressed.
yeah.
Then. Yeah. Lovely.
And I went to work there and I think my salary increased by about 12 grand.
Wow.
So it just puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Like how much my other firm just didn't want to pay anything. And then I went to work there and I really loved it there.
Wow.
But I wasn't doing IP.
Okay.
Because
What were you doing?
I was doing litigation, commercial and civil litigation.
Okay.
Nothing to do with IP. I'd never done IP other than...
So at this point you'd sort of left your media life behind
completely.
you, and you were like just a proper, but do you know what I mean? You were just a full-on...
Yeah. And
So
there was-
corporate.
Yeah, so
Solicitor.
I mean there was some civil stuff in there as well.
Yeah.
But it was more sort of like commercial corporate work. When you start as a solicitor, it's very, very difficult to, unless you work within a law firm that has so many different departments.
Yes.
You have to qualify into a department that has space for you.
Yeah.
So if they don't do an area of law, I mean, first, it's really hard to get a training contract. Secondly, you've got to find one that does the areas of law that you actually want to work in. And
Assuming
then
you know, or do you know? Do people tend to know?
people don't know because they've never really done it.
So they need the training contract
To be able to
and the
realise.
exposure to
Yeah.
kind of go, okay, well, it's like anything. It's like a doctor. It's
course.
like
Yeah,
you
it's
go on
finding
to be
your specialism.
Yeah.
And with law as well, like, you know, lots of firms will do your general law. So there'll be civil and commercial litigation, there'll be debt recovery, there'll be family, there'll be, you know, conveyancing department, commercial property department. You know, there's those general areas. And then you get other law firms that all tend to have sort of an intellectual property department, or there'll be a media law department, but those
You often
ones
don't have an IP department, though, do you?
No, they don't.
Because, for example, obviously we were having this chat, my divorce lawyer couldn't advise, would have to go out to, and even in terms of this other thing, they have to go out to
really specialised.
Yes.
Which is great for me because that's all I do.
Yeah.
But it's very specialised. And also you unfortunately get, and you do get this a lot in law firms, they'll say they do IP and they dabble and they have no idea what they're doing.
No.
And that's actually awful because it's not very good for the client because they're trusting that they know what they do. And I see it all the time. And they'll say, we're an IP law, and they'll send me a lawyer and they'll send me a letter. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing. I personally think it takes a stronger person a better lawyer to say, actually, I don't know much about that. I'm just going to refer you on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that. I do get referrals from guys that I've used to work with. I mean, nowadays, law firms it's more, there's a lot of female lawyers now.
Oh, well, that was going to be one of my questions, so when you were training, though, what was this?
Oh, there was, the firm that I worked at was more women than men were there.
How, in that small firm?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And actually as proper solicitors, not as the admin-y people.
Yeah, proper solicitors.
Interesting.
And then I would say a good mix at the next firm that I worked. I mean, the next firm that I went to in Leicester, they are one of the East Midlands' biggest law firms. I would say there's a good mix. I mean, especially on sort of like the partner, who were the partners.
The sort of leadership-y roles.
Yeah, very good mix, like definitely. But I would say probably more so within the last 20 years. I'd say before that it was definitely more male dominated. IP is a bit more male heavy, I would say.
Do you think that's because media's a bit more male heavy?
I don't know.
I mean, I've worked in media and I've generally, even though I've definitely worked with some amazing women, the people in real power have always been quite male.
I think that's probably because it's an extension of corporate departments, usually, an IP department, media
and
department.
or newspapers. It's a kick out from newspapers.
And so I think maybe that's more of a male-dominated, like if you go sort of the corporate departments of law firms are more male oriented, I would say, from my experience. They're not all, I'm not going to say that's every law firm, but from my experience, definitely. But I do get referrals from some of the guys I used to work with. I get more referrals from women, if I'm honest.
Interesting.
I know you have a little life in your head. I know you have a lot of strength left. I know you have a little life in your head.
Wow, that just kind of go, this is at my area.
Yeah.
And therefore you need to speak
So the law firm that I used to work in Leicester, when I decided to leave there, because at that time I was doing sort of the civil and commercial litigation, and I was being not pushed into that. I wouldn't say I was pushed at all. I sort of found a bit of a niche, and I was doing actions against the police and public authorities. And it was interesting work.
Controversial work, surely.
Really controversial. And it was not for me. I had clients that, quite frankly, didn't want to be in a room with on my own and wasn't allowed. There was one in particular, I had to go and see him a few times in prison. I used to go to prison all the time to see my clients because they were criminal clients that I was helping get money for things that happened to them because the police had done something wrong, or they weren't, they were on remand for 3 days longer than they should have been, and they weren't released from prison, and it didn't sit well with me, and I didn't like it, and I was good at it though. I was good at it. And
I think you'd be good at whatever you were doing.
Oh, that's very sweet. But
but like you say, it's hardworking and creative. Like you've said, it's those two skills together.
And I found it really interesting, and I did, as a subject, it's very interesting.
Well, the police is just...
Well, there was lots of...
Everard and stuff, it's just...
And there were loads of, like, taser things with the police, and, I learned a lot, actually. But morally and ethically, it didn't sit right with me. Because I remember I had one case in particular, and he was a really scary guy. He was awful to me, even though I was trying to help him. So
get him some money, potentially, some compensation.
You could get some compensation. And I ended up getting him, like, I don't know, in between 5 and 10 grand's worth of compensation. And I just knew that was just going to fuel his drug business, or it's just going to go back into... it just wasn't going to be used right, and I didn't feel that's how I wanted to contribute.
No,
in the industry. So I made the decision that I needed to move firms. I needed to do something else, and the recruitment agent that got me that role, I spoke to her, who's still like a really good friend of mine, actually. She's got me my last 2-3 jobs. And she told me about a firm of patent and trademark attorneys that were looking to take on a litigator, solicitor, to retrain as a trademark attorney. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
No.
I didn't even know that I'd never heard of a trademark attorney before.
Purely specialising in that. Yeah, like you said, other than just a department or a person. Yeah. Wow.
And I went for that job and I got it. And then I went to work for a firm of patent and trademark attorneys, and that's all that we did. So I went in as a solicitor. I then went back to university because I hadn't done enough. I went to the Queen Mary University of London.
Wow.
And I became a chartered trademark attorney. So I had to do a course there. Then I had to, after that part of that course, I then had to go to Nottingham Trent and do the equivalent of the LPC. there for
LPC.
legal practice course that I'd done in
Right.
Guildford,
Oh my gosh.
I then had to do that again, but from an IP perspective, because I was just doing IP. But because
Did you have to do that legally?
Yes, to qualify as chartered trademark. Yeah, I did.
And how much of that exists in the legal world whereby you end up having to go back?
Oh, it's very rare.
Is
There's
it? I was
not
going to
many
say there's
dual
just
qualified.
a few. Okay.
Yeah, there aren't many dual qualified solicitors and trademark attorneys. It's unusual. It's not.
Right.
It's not that it's unusual. There's not many of us really in the UK.
I wonder why for that particular area you have to become...
You don't. I mean, you can be a solicitor and just do it.
Right.
The reason you would go and do the course and become a dual qualified is because you are doing basically a course that is just teaching you how to be a trademark attorney.
Right.
So really specialising in trademarks, copyright and design law. And you don't get that as a solicitor.
No.
You get your training in-house as part of your training contract, but they don't send you back to university to make sure specialise just in that and nothing else.
No.
So, and then when I went to Nottingham to do that part of the course, I was allowed to do it over a week because I was already a solicitor.
Of course.
And so it was more the advocacy part and how to deal with, everything in front of the UK Intellectual Property Tribunal, because we have different ways. In the world of IP, there's the Intellectual Property Office, and there's a tribunal that we use for
like queries or challenges.
Challenges and oppositions and things like that. But we also have our own court as well, the Intellectual Property Enterprise Court, the IPAC, which is a separate court. So it's
very specialised.
It is, yeah.
And therefore, if you aren't in that area.
So I would say if anybody wanted to be a lawyer and they wanted to do trademarks and IP and just do that, I'd absolutely not become a solicitor. I'd just go and become a trademark attorney. And if I had my time again, I probably would have just become a trademark attorney. Would have saved me loads of bloody time.
Okay, so you're now in this law firm then?
Yeah. So I was then at the patent and trademark attorney firm.
Yeah.
Was there 7 years or 8 years?
Hang on, so what age were you at when you left that so you were doing because we've not even remotely discussed a timeline here, so obviously...
No, sorry.
No, that's just me. I'm forgetting I'm actually recording a podcast. That's meant to be helpful to people, rather than just me. Okay, so when you were doing all the police stuff, what age were you then?
Okay, so let's think about this. So I was probably... I know I was probably about 27. I qualified as solicitor in 2010.
Yeah.
I'm now 41.
Yeah.
When I went to the patent and trademark attorneys, I was about 28.
Okay.
29.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So how long were you at that firm for then? A couple of years?
The patent and trademark attorneys...
Oh, no, the one before that.
Oh, the one before 3 years.
Okay.
So I qualified in 2010. I stayed there until 2013. In 2013, I was then at the patent and trademark attorneys firm for 7 years. Aww. 7 or 8 years. And then I left there and I went back to a law firm, back to a solicitor's.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what made you leave then? Because 7 years, you're doing it for 7 years. You're obviously in it, doing amazing at it.
I think, so when I was at that firm, I was having my second maternity leave with Thomas, my youngest, and I went back to work during lockdown, a week after lockdown.
Right.
And I went back to working in my garage because there was nowhere else to get away from the children because obviously they weren't at nursery. And then when I came back as well, so my old boss had transferred all her work to this other person in the team. That other person also was looking after my files. And then when I came back, nobody gave me any work. So I had hardly anything to do. And I remember looking at how many cases were in her name and how many, because I was having it out with my boss about this. I was like, come on, she's got to give me some work. This is ridiculous. I had something like 50, 60 cases. She had like 450, 500 cases. I mean, yeah, they've not got an action ongoing all the time. It's not the point. My caseload had been dramatically reduced.
For what reason, though?
Because I've been away.
Yeah, but
they should have just given, oh, right, Gemma, get out all your cases. But I think I had some, because she'd basically picked all the good ones that she wanted. Yeah. And which is she totally entitled to do. I just don't think it was very fair how it was, sorted. And I don't, maybe I would have done the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But okay. I just kind of thought, oh, this is really unfair. So I broached the subject and sort of had it out with them. And basically they made loads of excuses. Apparently I'd done loads of things wrong. And I was like, well, what have I done wrong?
Yeah, because you've never told me this.
You've never told me before. You've made mistakes. Well, okay, what are those mistakes? But they obviously weren't that bad, because you've never told me.
I'm sure everyone's making mistakes, because you're all human.
Well, also as well, like if it was such a bad mistake, the client would have been informed. Or do you know what I mean? Like, tell me where I'm going wrong. And so then I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. This is, and when I'd spoken
Had it maybe brought a load of stuff that you realised actually you'd been compromising a lot, you weren't happy even before going off? Because sometimes little life shifts like that make you re-look at things, don't you think, actually?
No, I was happy. I did enjoy my job. I liked working there. But there'd been so many things that had changed whilst I was off. It wasn't the same place anymore.
Yeah.
I think with my boss leaving, that was a big thing, because I did really like her and I had a lot of time for her. So I think that was a big issue for me. It was too many changes, and I just thought, I can't. Maybe it's the right time for me to go. And then I went to work for a very well-known, UK law firm. I was lucky, and I knew loads of people that worked at that firm. I had lots of friends that worked at that firm. So I then went to work in the IP department for that firm of solicitors.
So this is now 2021, is it?
No, this is... Oh, yeah, 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, 21.
Wow.
Yeah. And I decided to start that role full-time.
Right.
Because it was a huge salary and I didn't want to lose 20% of it.
Yeah.
When I knew that I'd be doing the same amount of work anyway over 40.
Twiddling your thumbs a little bit for 9 months.
I really wanted to get stuck in. Yeah, I did. And it was great. I really did like the work that I was doing. It just was a bit stressful because of who I was some of the people that I was working with. Okay. I would say too much because
but we're talking big names, big brands.
No, I mean that was exciting. Yes, working with big well-known brands, absolutely love that. I did at a small firm though. Worked with some really massive brands. A lot of big brands do like to instruct smaller, because they get they do. I mean even now, on my own, I've worked with some big brands.
So how long were you there for then? Did you do a year? Or?
No, so basically I had 9 months probation.
Yeah.
And if I handed my notice in before the end of that 9 months, I only need to give a month's notice.
Yeah.
After that, it would have been 3 months.
Yeah.
So I was very strategic. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in our emotions.
In the specific environment that we're in, that it clouds everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during that time when I kind of made peace with the fact that I was going to give in my notice, I felt terrible. I felt like I'd really let them down, but I just thought, it's not for me. And I had to put myself first. Years ago, I'd never done that. I would have thought about them more than me.
You're a mum now, though, aren't you? Your life, the responsibility.
You give less shits, don't you, I think, as well? Definitely.
Well, I think it gives you a different perspective on, you have a responsibility to your children.
Yeah.
You feel responsibility for yourself, for your children, don't you? So it becomes, you as an entity become a more, in some ways, way less important thing, because you're ranking right at the bottom of everything, but equally, from a responsibility point, you kind of, it's weird. Being a mum is so messed up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weird.
But then, I thought, what do I do? And I...
So where are we now? So this is now, we're in 2023?
No, 21 still.
22. Oh, so this is now the start of 22 then?
Yeah.
Ah.
So handing my notice in, I'd already spoken to a few people who had gone it alone.
Okay.
Yeah, more and more solicitors are doing it now. There are
So
firms.
not going for not setting up their own practices, just being a lone ranger, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing it. There's a few firms of solicitors now where you can go and work as a freelance solicitor, but you work under their umbrella.
Yes.
Yeah. They're becoming really popular, and the reason for that is because I think you earn better money.
Oh.
So when you are at a normal law firm, you have your hourly rate that obviously you charge, and then you only get a very small percentage of that, which is your salary.
Yeah.
And when I worked out the maths, I was like, oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like how much I was earning for the business and what I was taking out in comparison. So that's crazy. And so I spoke to a few people who've done it from a trademark attorney point of view. I kind of worked out, okay, how do I do this? Like, how much is the insurance? All of that. How do I do it? Do I do it as a solicitor? Do I do it as a chartered trademark attorney? And to cut long story short, I decided, right, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
As a trademark attorney. I won't renew my practicing certificate as a solicitor. I'm still on the roll as solicitor. I won't renew it because it costs more to be insured as a solicitor than it does as a chartered trademark attorney.
Right.
So that is literally the only reason I do it as a non-practicing solicitor.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot more, it's better on the insurance.
But equally, you kind of knew you were doing specialism now, so
yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
Technically, you didn't need that, and so you can come back to it.
Clients do not care.
No, they want your specialist expertise, don't they? They want to know that you really know your stuff.
Yeah. So the fact that I'm non-practicing, it just means I'm not regulated by the SRA, but I am regulated by IPREG.
Yeah.
So I'm still regulated professional in that regard. It's easier to be a trademark attorney than it is to be a solicitor from a sole practitioner point of view. I mean, the first year was I started with no clients. I had no clients at all. It's gone bigger and bigger and bigger, and now I'm at the point where I'm doing going to incorporate limited companies soon, and I'm changing it into, instead of just being sort of like a freelance lawyer, which I have been, doing it as a sort of like a boutique law firm rather than just being on my own. And I've now got an assistant. I'm sort of having to refer work out to other trademark attorneys that are freelance to give me a bit more time.
So you've got a freelance roster then that you go to?
Yeah, I've got one person.
Do they still do it under you though? It's still under you?
So they will do the work, send it to me, and then I will do it. So it's just going from strength to strength. So my little let's see if it works is now turned into like a proper company.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Gosh, okay. Well, one of my constant questions, but I'm acutely aware of time, is what's next? But that is what's next. Then you're just going to... So you're just going to see where this goes?
Yeah. I mean, if I am at the point where I can start taking on other lawyers, bloody brilliant.
My 3 final questions. What life advice would you give to your younger self? So that little Gemma, and it could be that 6-year-old that was behind the reading, or it could be secondary, whichever version of yourself. Is there any life advice you would want to share?
I would say you can be whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do.
Do you not think she thought that at the time?
No, I don't think so. Like when my nan would say to me, like, oh, you can't do that. And it did put doubt in my mind. Or, I was the first person in my family to go to university. I truly believe that anybody can do anything that they put their mind to. I really believe that. You don't ever doubt yourself. And I have doubted myself. But you just have to work out. Everything just works out in the end.
Okay. So life advice your older self would give you now. So the age I'm going for is 65, to be consistent with all my guests. 65-year-old Gemma, what do you think she would say to you now?
try not to do it all. Probably. I struggle with that. I sometimes say to my husband, don't you just wish that you could stop time, get all the things that you need to get done and restart it again?
Or Control Z it.
Yeah.
Like undo. See what I mean? Like,
I think sometimes as women, we put way too much pressure on ourselves.
we're definitely in the era of that, aren't we?
Yeah.
My final question then is a piece of life advice or a mantra to throw up there for anybody. Is there something that you, if like the way I describe it is, if Gemma had a T-shirt, what would it say?
Pass me a tune. I'm joking.
Alcohol solves everything. Yeah.
What would it say? It's been really boring, but it is, like I said before, that you can do anything. You if you put your mind to it, you can achieve whatever you want to, because if you want it enough, you will. You really will. And you should
just
never
believe
you've got
in
just to
yourself.
believe and not let anybody tell you can't do it.
I'm going to say thank you very much, Gemma.
Thank you.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go to our website www.thiswomanswork.org. The link is on this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.
Give me